Hi, friends. Welcome to Lead to Gold. Welcome in. Welcome to the party. This is the podcast devoted to discussing all things growth and wellness. And I'm your host, Erin Taylor, and we are here for episode 24. Thank you for being here. I have a lot to say today and a lot of feelings today, as I'm sure many of us do. And today's topic is going to be tough, I think. But I hope that you stay with me. I hope that you get something out of this and continue the conversations elsewhere in your life. And if you really do enjoy this episode and get something out of it, it truly means so much to me. First off, if you DM me on Instagram and let me know your thoughts, I always want to hear from you. I always want to continue these conversations with you all wherever, whether that be my DMs or you can send me an email. Everything's in the show notes. I would also be so appreciative if you haven't already, if you would like to leave a review at the end of this episode to let me know how you think of it. That would be great too. And last but not least, this is a really important conversation. I am really trying to become more intentional about the kinds of conversations that I bring to this platform. You will never, ever hear me talk about something that is not incredibly important and incredibly relevant to my audiences, whether that be here or on my blog. There's just no space for it in my life. If I'm talking about it, it's a really big deal in my life, and I think in most people's lives in some form or another. So if you find this helpful and you want to share it with a friend, please do. I would really, really love that. And just to give you guys any little updates on my life, I mentioned a few episodes back that I was in the process of pre-recording a lot of episodes because I was getting back into school. I don't know if I shared any details on this, but if you didn't already know, I'm a high school English teacher. I have gone my first 3 years of teaching straight just grade level English, so 9th grade and 11th grade. This year I switched over to AP Language and Composition, and I was really, really nervous about it at first because it's a way more difficult class than the standard English 11 that I was teaching. It's essays almost every week, so I knew that I was going to be grading for pretty much the whole year. And I really didn't know how well I was going to adjust to that. So I decided before I even started the school year to just kind of not take a break from the podcast, because I've still done an episode every 2 weeks, but rather just kind of take a step back and front load a couple episodes so that I could adjust and see how I was feeling with the workload and then come back to it when I felt more ready. Hoping that I was going to feel ready and prepared at some point. So the good news is that has gone so well, so incredibly well. I am absolutely loving teaching AP Lang. I love it. And one of the main reasons for that is because it is more high level, of course. So it's something that I can actually really get deep into. And I've been so happy to be able to do that because English is my passion. I have always been such an English nerd. It's always been my favorite class in school. And then when I got into college, I just absolutely loved all of my classes. So being able to share that with high school level students, actually talking about linguistics and rhetorical choices and why these things are important and how they make a difference in writing, it's just been great. And it's a huge, huge change from last year and the years before as I was teaching. It may be unknown to some, but last year was tough as a teacher for me, and I was considering leaving the profession after only 3 years, which brought on a lot of guilt and weird feelings, which, I mean, I'll get into that later. But this year has been so far pretty polar opposite, and I feel really, really good about what I'm doing. I feel very on top of things. Still, a little procrastinating, but that's a lifelong thing. But mostly I'm just really enjoying being able to have these higher level conversations with my students and seeing us see eye to eye on a lot of things, seeing them get it, and also being excited about getting it. That's something that I didn't see as commonly in the academic level. And that's not to say that they weren't excited to learn or anything like that, but in the AP class, it tends to be a little bit more prominent. And I've just loved it. I've loved every second of it. And on top of that, it hasn't completely overwhelmed me. Yeah, it's a lot of grading, but I've been able to handle it so far. So that feels really, really great. And anyway, we are back today kind of on a regular schedule. This is being recorded, I think, 3 days before it's going to come out. So that is where we're at. And I'm just really excited to be back here on a more regular schedule. And just to kind of contextualize where we are in time right now, we're currently just out of a short eclipse season that visited Taurus and Scorpio, and it felt very, very potent to me. Both the full moon and the new moon that just most recently happened, I was feeling so overwhelmed with emotion during the new moon, which, don't hate me, but I am going to go Astro Ho moment for a second here. It felt very appropriate for Scorpio season to be under a Scorpio new moon and just feeling all of this heaviness and all of this shit, which we're going to get into today in very real, very physical terms. But it was just a lot. And in a way, I was grateful for it because it presented a very noticeable and very clear opportunity for me to sit with how I was feeling about a lot of things and be able to kind of purge that, but also at the same time being able to call in new intentions and new ways of dealing with these really heavy emotions. And honestly, that is what Scorpio season is about. It is about visiting the darkness. It is about pulling out all of that deep ingrained shit that we feel and that we ignore on a regular basis to really look at it and decide what to do with it. And that is really what I think is getting us into this episode topic for today, is some of the themes that have been coming up during this process. So one last little piece that I'll share from this sort of eclipse season and my emotional journey, or whatever you want to call it, I did something really, really special on the full moon just the other day, actually. And I wanted to share it here because it felt like the first time I was really able to experience something like this in person that dealt with so much of what I love to talk about and so much of what I love to explore in these conversations in person. So I planned kind of a spontaneous trip with my partner to Tulum, Mexico for our anniversary. And I didn't really have a reason for it. I wanted to do something nice for our anniversary. And I was like, I don't know, I've been hearing stuff about Tulum. It seems kind of cool. Let's go to Tulum. And it's a pretty short plane ride from where I live. So I was like, yeah, why not? But while we were down there, I wanted to invite in experiences that felt authentic and felt healing, as is usually called for when you visit Tulum. And I found a full moon healing ceremony that took place at one of the more kind of upscale spas down by the beach there. And it was a traditional native practice that was led by a native Aztec man. And he, oh my God, did such an incredible job facilitating this ceremony. We got there and I really didn't know what to expect. I thought it was just going to be kind of like this hoity-toity spa ceremony. I didn't know if it was going to feel authentic at all, but they sat us down. We were in a group of about 10 people. They had this beautiful altar made with just like different pieces from his family heirlooms and ancestry and just the most gorgeous setup. And they had a fire going in the background. So the stones were heating up there. And essentially this was all in preparation for a temezcali is what it's called, which is a sweat lodge. So we talked about all sorts of like preliminary things to think about, or, you know, if there are any stressors in life right now, if there are any major things that you want to think about or mutate, change while you're in the temezcal, this is how you do it. So we brought up kind of the things that we wanted to focus on. We set our intentions. And then for 2 hours, we went into this sweat lodge with a bunch of strangers as they pulled the rocks out of the fire and threw them in and then poured water over it and then shut the door. So we're completely in darkness, just like chanting and singing and crying and screaming. And it was like so amazing. It was just so amazing. However, and this is kind of the point that I'm getting at, I felt a little bit scattered. I didn't quite pin down an intention while I was there. I was just kind of feeling like all over the place. And in a way, it frustrated me because I was like, God, I'm like finally here. We're doing this thing that I've wanted to do for so long. And I kind of just can't center myself. I don't know why, but maybe I was nervous. Maybe I was just kind of like unsure of what to expect. And I don't know. I was having some not so great thoughts about it. But after the actual sweat lodge portion of the ceremony ended and we all got to kind of reemerge. And side note, I love what this is supposed to represent. It's when you're inside the lodge, or it looked more like a stone igloo that we were in, it's supposed to represent the womb. And when you step out, you are essentially reborn because you've spent 2 hours sweating and getting all of your emotions out and just doing what you need to do to really metamorphosize. So when you step out, you are effectively new. And that's really when it set in for me, that as soon as we sat down and we kind of rejoined each other in the circle outside of it, they made us lemongrass tea, which was amazing. And we took cold showers and then we just kind of reflected. And in that moment, I felt more at peace. And I felt more like, okay, that's what this was for. And that's what I want to talk about today. Essentially, the lesson that came from that experience, but also really in general, the notion that has been trying to make its way through for me for the past month or so. And this notion is one that I really, truly believe we could all benefit from right now in this current space. All of the things that our world is currently experiencing, undergoing, collectively witnessing. It's a really big lesson, and not only for me, but something that I think appropriately comes out of such an immense healing journey and a very potent, very important eclipse season that is meant to bring this sort of realization about, one of darkness and light all together at the same time. And so the overall lesson that came to me was that there is a space to hold both gratitude and guilt. And this is something that I have always struggled with, and I think many, many people struggle with. Before I go any further, I feel that I need to really acknowledge what's going on in the world right now. There's no way that we can really get into this conversation without stating just the horrible, horrible, horrible news from Palestine and the pain that comes with that. Whether you have direct ties to it or not, seeing those images and hearing what is being done to these people is awful. It has, if it does not affect you, I don't know how you're human, to be quite frank. But it's been really tough to sit with and to know what to say. And I know that this is something that a lot of people struggle with. Like, we just really don't know how to go about having tough conversations like this, especially online. And especially when we feel like we are ill-informed or don't know enough or don't have close enough ties. It's like, am I still obligated to discuss it? Do I have to post about it? What do I do with this? Right? And I feel also, just as I'm talking about this, I will admit, I feel a lot of perceived judgment in everything that I could possibly say about this. Is like, oh, well, who is this going to offend? And what am I going to mess up and not say exactly right? And what do I not have the authority to talk about? You know, all of these things. And there is a big part of me that feels like I don't have a place to talk about this. And I don't want to be just another voice out there in the void of all of this, because at the end of the day, you know, what do I have to do with it? Now, before I get into that too much, I just want to hold some space to acknowledge that this is really hard and it should be painful. And if you are grieving, if you are having a hard time, if you are one of the many people out there who is questioning how the fuck we're all even functioning right now, I'm with you, because it's not lost on me. I'll be in the middle of my lesson on commas and periods and capitalizing our I's and then remember what the fuck is going on halfway across the world. And yeah, it's like, what is going on? What is going on? Where is the humanity, right? So I want us all to recognize the necessity of grieving, the absolute need for grief in this time, and through processes like these, and through truly every horrible, awful thing that we are now exposed to. And in that, I also want you to recognize that it's not natural to be exposed to so much. So it's no wonder. It's no wonder we are so afraid and so scared and so caught in our grief, because we can't escape it unless, I just said this in a blog post just the other day, unless we are so committed to dropping off the face of the earth, communication-wise, living off the grid and getting off of social media. Unless that is our life, we can't escape this. We are inextricably tied to constant media. And right now, the horrible conflict and violence that we're seeing is most of the mass media. And this is obviously a polarizing issue, but I want to also acknowledge why that happens and part of what might be making it worse. It's very, very difficult to be on both sides about this issue. It's really not something that you can condense into that. It's not. And a lot of people with very, very strong feelings out there on the internet will tell you that. Part of what makes this so polarizing is, or at least what makes it perceived as that, is because the algorithms on your social media platforms know what you want to see. I think we know this if we're somewhat media literate, but the algorithm knows what you want to see and will show you more of what you want to see. It's not going to give you the other side. It's not going to give you people to have civil public discourse with. That's not what it's for. It wants you to engage. It wants you to feed into something. right? And if you are then exposed to the other side, or you choose to look at the comment section of something where people are inevitably going to very highly emotionally disagree with what's being said, that triggers us too. And all of this is intended for engagement. It is intended to keep you on the platform, looking longer, responding to more comments, liking more posts, refreshing and resharing more posts. All of this is intended to keep you on the platform longer. Why? Because it makes the company money. That's why. So I don't want to be too preachy in this episode because everybody deals with their grief differently, and I want that for you. I want you to deal with this in whatever way feels right for you. But one thing I want to also suggest is that if you are somebody who, admittedly, like me, chooses to look at the comments, resist that urge, because when we do that, we are choosing to stress ourselves out more. We are actively stressing ourselves out more. Fight the urge to read the comments, and especially to respond to the comments, because nothing good ever happens when you respond to a fucking Instagram comment. We all know this. Just don't. Please don't. There's also really nothing that can be solved on an internet platform like this, in this way. Nothing is going to get solved by engaging with people online who are strangers who disagree with you, especially now when we don't even know if it's a real person. And that happens a lot. Talk to people in your real waking life about this. Most of your friends are probably in agreement with what you already have to say, but talk to them. And if you really want to, talk to your friends and family who may not agree with you if you feel the need to. If you want people to be better informed, make sure that you are the harbinger in their life for a quality conversation that is steeped in love, first off, and also just open and vulnerable and real. That is where true change is made. It's not in the comment section. I promise you that. But when all of this comes up, we have so many emotions within ourselves, right? When you see these big emotions on the internet, you're met with your own either fighting or fueling emotions. The things that either you agree with or disagree with are going to trigger a response in you, especially with something as heavy and awful and horrible as a genocide. A couple weeks ago, God, this was honestly quite a shock to me, and I'm happy that I was present for it when it did happen in live time, because it's not something that I've ever really been able to pick up on before. But my partner and I had a conversation about all of this, and I realized that there were some things that we could not avoid as Americans, the fact that we are funding a lot of what's going on. We are funding the weapons that are being used against the people that, as American citizens, we stand with, right? And we were just having a conversation about it, and I was getting really heightened and really heated. And he actually was like, is this a really emotional topic for you? Are you feeling really emotional about this right now? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, all right, well, let's maybe just put it down for now, and we'll talk about it again when we can both be more on the ground and level-headed with it, which I really appreciated as a side note. But my point in saying that is, when he brought that up, it brought to my attention for the first time just how emotional this has made me. And this is obviously not the first time. Anytime anything happens that's really big and really scary, it's gonna elicit an emotional reaction and a lot of internal feelings. I am here to tell you that we have to face that. We have to meet that when it happens. I know I've said this before. This is something I talk about in a lot of different ways all the time, but we have to meet our big emotions and do something with them. Not for the sake of getting rid of them, but for the sake of honoring them. Because without doing that, they stay and they overstay their welcome. And that turns into resentment and closing off and discomfort in social situations. And that is obviously not good. So we need to face that. We need to honor our emotional states when we are too upset to talk about something right in that moment. Maybe we need to move instead. Maybe we need to sit in the dark and cry, honestly. I've definitely felt the need for that. Maybe we do need to have an open, honest, vulnerable container with another person where we can just yell about it and scream and maybe cry there too. But know that we're safe to do that and know that we're not making anybody else uncomfortable. And those are some really special relationships when we can find that. So all of this to say, when you feel the big, intense, scary, awful emotions, I know it's scary, but do something with them. Acknowledge them, invite them in, talk with them. I want to send you so much love with wherever you are right now, whatever you're going through, whether the war is even a big part of your personal day-to-day right now, or if it's something else big. We're all going through something. We're all bogged down with something. So I want to take this moment to just send you love and recognize within myself too that I am more actively trying to operate from a place of love. And this is something that came through during the full moon ceremony, which is kind of taking it full circle. But that was the realization that I was able to really actually sit with once it was over, was I get the choice to operate from a place of love, to operate from love. Mentally, all the time, I'm like, love is the answer, love is everything. That can sound super woo-woo, and I don't care because I believe that it's the truth. Love is the center of everything that we do and everything that we should do and everything that keeps us going as humans. It's love. But that gets lost a lot. And I think that's a shame. More often than not, it's my guilt that shines through, or it's the guilt that overtakes the way that I feel. And the reason that I want to bring this forward and that I want to operate from love is because nobody benefits from my guilt. Nobody benefits from your guilt. Nobody benefits from guilt, period. And I want to let that sink in for a minute, because this is something that I've struggled with for probably forever without noticing it. But only recently I've been able to be like, wow, why is it so hard to hold gratitude and grief at the same time? It's a huge block for me. It always has been, I think. But I had this realization through this sort of portal that I just went through, right? That gratitude and guilt can exist together. And that just never made sense to me before. And one thing that I want to bring up with this is sort of the way that I had always internalized this before, which is that, you know, in wellness, in the circles that I'm in that are spiritual and really just divinely guided and well-intentioned, but sometimes seem a little bit up there in the clouds, not down to earth, not really facing what's real. in other words, the sort of love and light community, right? They're all really into manifesting. They're all really into gratitude practices, right? But I love gratitude practices. I think they're so necessary until something awful happens and shakes the entire world. And then I've always kind of been like, well, what right do I have to be grateful when these people don't have these things? What right do I have to sit here every morning and journal about how I'm grateful for the sun waking me up in the morning, and I'm grateful for my cat sleeping next to my side, and I'm grateful for my morning coffee, and I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for my house and my mortgage and my money and da-da-da-da. Like, what good does that do when part of the world is on fire, when people are actively being killed? What good does that do? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to be thankful and grateful for these things whilst there are so many people that don't have access to it? I've always felt this way. I've always had this internal block of, I shouldn't be allowed to do this. Like, what makes me special? Why do I get this and they don't? It's guilt, pinnacle guilt. But guilt is dangerous, because if we start giving into that, if we start feeling that way about, I have all of these things, why do I deserve them and these people don't deserve them? It's an easy route, first off, to depression, which of course then leads to a lack of motivation, a lack of ability to act, a lack of ability to actually talk about things that matter or feel like there's a purpose in doing that, in doing anything. It's a very slippery slope to give into guilt and to let it take over. But the thing is, and this is the thing that I've kind of had to realize and sit with, is that my feeling guilty will not change anything. It doesn't do anything. It's like I said a minute ago, it does not serve a purpose. It does not help anybody. It doesn't benefit anybody. My guilt will not change anything. So, as much as I am trying to embed this episode and this conversation with love, I also want to embed it with some tough love. If you are like me, if you experience a lot of really, really deep guilt, and I know that there are lots of us because I've talked to friends about this, it's a tough love moment. Give it up. Give it up. There's no point. And I know that that is a lot easier said than done, but maybe it helps in saying that only action is going to solve a problem. Your guilt is inhibiting you from taking action. It's not going to help you solve any sort of problem. And this doesn't even have to be related to the Israel-Palestine war. It does, like that's the overarching example that's going on in my life right now. That's the overarching feeling that I'm getting in the big piece of media that is being sent to us and that we're being forced to think about and being forced to face as Americans. It doesn't have to be about that. People feel guilt for not being a good enough mother to their child, not being a good enough partner, not being good enough in general. There is so much opportunity for us to feel guilty in this life because we are fed an expectation of how we should be, and we feel like we're not meeting that. No matter what it is, it's a universal thing. Everybody has guilt. And to a degree, it's normal, it is normal. But what I think we need to reframe is how long to hold on to that, or like, are we obligated to hold on to that? I would say, let go of it. I'm not saying maybe don't ever feel guilt. Sometimes maybe it's necessary, but it's not helping anything. The only thing that will help is action. And in order to take action, we have to get over that hurdle. We have to reach into our true emotions. That's not guilt. Emotions are the things beyond that we need to face, that we need to work through and compromise with and come to some sort of conclusion, some sort of agreement, and then work on it. Work from there. Do something with it. Action is really, truly the only answer in solving what lies in front of us. It's action. If you feel like you are not a good enough mother, what are the steps you can take to feel like a better mother? If you feel like you're not a good enough partner, what are the things that you are not currently doing in your relationship that you can do? And this is a big thing too. This is me calling myself out, because I say this to myself all the time. Ugh, I'm not a good enough partner. I'm not doing enough. I don't appreciate when these things happen. But me just continuing that thought loop isn't doing anything. I have to actually change my actions. And that is the hardest part. But it's a necessary, hard thing to do. So, gratitude and guilt can be together. They can live together. They can coexist. But we have to recognize that one of them just really genuinely does not help us do anything, and the other does. So use them wisely. And in all honesty, as I'm talking about this, I'm remembering a little snippet of a podcast interview with Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight Schrute in The Office, but it's something that I just randomly saw one day, but it's sticking out to me now as I'm talking about this, and I'm going to play the snippet actually for you, because I think it so perfectly encapsulates what I'm trying to say here and what kind of giving into guilt does. And it's not a good thing. So let's listen to that really quick.
He grabbed my arm. He looked into my eyes. And he's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't give in to cynicism. Don't be pessimistic. If you do that, they win. That's how they want you. If you're pessimistic, if you're cynical, they win because you aren't going to do anything to change the world. It is so important to foster joy and hope in everything that we do. How do we especially engender that and inspire that in the younger generation? How do we do that with teens? How do we do that with college kids and people in their 20s that are lost and dealing with this rampant mental health crisis that's killing millions? That's our most important task in front of us.
Yeah, I really couldn't put it much better than that. And something else that he adds in that I really love and have been really pondering a lot lately. And in fact, if you read my last blog post, I'll link it in the show notes. But something that I really talked about there is just how purposeful my job feels now, being an English teacher, teaching high schoolers, teaching essentially young adults. I guess they're not adults yet, but they're close. Teaching them the skills that they now need in order to sift through all of this information and all of the bad news that is constantly being thrown at them. They're at the forefront of this problem, but they're not being given the tools to navigate it and to think critically about it. So it's honestly been a really awesome revelation in my life recently that I actually am doing some really, really important work, and I only hope that I can reach more people in doing that, because media literacy is so important, more important now than it has ever, ever, ever been, and it will only continue to get more important. And that ties in so deeply with the mental health conversation and the conversation of how do we deal with bad news? How do we deal with the horrors of the world? Because there are a lot of them. I think the shortest answer is we don't let go of our gratitude. We instead use that as fuel to spark action, to spark conversations, and to hold on to love. Because as cheesy and woo-woo as it may sound, again, I don't care. We need more love now than we have ever needed it, because we are so constantly bombarded with awful shit. How else are we going to combat that but with more love? To me, that's the answer. So, a heavy topic today, and a lot to think about, a lot to perhaps reconsider, reflect on, but I would so much rather be having this conversation than talking about dumb bullshit, to be honest with you, to be quite frank with you. It's really, really heavy on my heart right now, and I am just happy to have a place to bring it and potentially have some camaraderie and conversations around it. So if you're still here, thank you. And as per usual, we will end today's episode with a game of We're Not Really Strangers. So if you are just tuning in for the first time, I always pull a card from the healing expansion pack of the game We're Not Really Strangers. And I love reflecting on this at the end of each episode. And I always encourage listeners to journal along with this question. And I'm pulling straight out of the deck at random, so it may or may not have to do with everything we just talked about. But regardless, if it inspires you to think about things going on in your own life, I encourage you to grab a pen, grab a paper, and journal a little bit about it. And if it doesn't serve your needs for today, that is totally okay too. But here we go. Here is today's question. Okay. What piece of advice has helped your mental health the most? What piece of advice has helped your mental health the most? If we're taking this in the scope of like my entire life, I would probably say I can only control what I do. I think that, I don't know why that one has been the one to really, really stick with me throughout my entire life. I guess I shouldn't say my entire life. I first picked this idea up in 2020, I think. It was right around the time that I was really kind of undergoing my my spiritual awakening. And I don't know exactly where this quote came from, but it just really, really stuck with me. It's like a mantra at this point. But I can only control what I do. It helped me so much because I have always dealt with the type of anxiety that just makes me feel like everything in the world is my responsibility. Every emotion that I encounter, everything that I see in the world is related to me and is, I don't want to say because of me, because I know that that's not really the case, but just like it always felt like I had to care about everything and respond to everything and act on everything, do everything. And that's, first off, obviously not realistic, but also, holy shit, the amount of stress that I would put myself through believing that. That was truly a belief of mine. But when I finally kind of got this little download of, hey, dude, I can only control my actions. There are other things going on in the world that are not my fault and not my responsibility. At first, it felt harsh, but the freedom that realization brought once I really was able to sit with it and be like, oh, shit, like, I genuinely, like, it's not even a question of like feeling guilty. It's just like, no, I genuinely only have responsibility over myself and what I do. And there's nothing else to feel guilty for. The only reason I should feel guilty is if I am actively not doing what I think is morally good to do. Then I should feel guilty. But otherwise, bad shit going on in the world, that does not inherently need to ensue guilt. Because what's the point? In fact, this question ties in quite well to what we've been talking about today. So yeah, that's my short answer made a lot longer, but I can only control what I do. I think about it quite often when I get really frustrated, even just in smaller day-to-day things like the reactions of other people or the way that other people act and carry themselves. Hey, I can only control myself. I cannot control this person. I can't change their mind. I can't make them think it differently. I can't make them act differently. I can only control what I do. So meditate on that if you'd like. If that resonates, you're welcome, I guess. But in any case, I would love to know if you want to share your response to this question, what piece of advice has helped your mental health the most? And I will, in Spotify, kind of make this that question to respond to. We can talk about it on Instagram, whatever suits your fancy. I would just love to hear from you. And I said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. Thank you so much for being here. Today's conversation, I feel like, is just really important and something that I needed to get out. So I hope that it helped you, and I hope we can talk about it. Until next time, be well, treat yourself well, love on the people in your life, because I know we all need it right now. And I love you. Thanks for being here. Bye.